All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the show to be named later, which maybe is the second. This is the penultimate episode called the show to be named later, I think. Right? Because I think we'll be named by the new year.
We might, or we might not. Maybe you three people who listen could give us some more ideas. I'm just saying.
I think Craig is like frustrated with us.
Right.
Yeah.
I gave you an idea. Give me the prize.
Yeah, but this is a work in progress, man. You know, Rome wasn't built in a day.
And I think, frankly, you guys should get used to the idea that we may just decide to rearrange our furniture at any time and change our name. So,
yeah, that's why you need to. How do the kids say it? Smash that subscribe button.
Like and subscribe. And share, frankly. Pass it on to your friends. It's not like we're charging anything yet.
No, no. And you know what? I mean, having it was funny because I was watching some video about the upcoming Superman trailer, and it was one of those videos that was 9 minutes long, and the guy just kept basically saying in a loop for 9 minutes things he didn't know the answer to, but he just kept repercusing that he doesn't know the answer to. And, well, it might be about this, and it might be about that, but I don't really know. And my wife was like, "People watch this shit?" And I said, "Yes, 70,000 people watch this shit." Yeah. So, and we're not even making shit. Like, we actually think about what we're going to talk about.
I mean, there's an entire cottage industry of YouTube channels that just ramble for. I don't know why we can't monetize it. I think we should be.
I think we should be.
We're 10 years late to the party. I think that's the issue. But still,
we're 10 years late to the party and 20 years late for our audience. But there we go. But we do it's kind of an exciting year. Andy, we're going to talk a lot about the college football playoff. First, we're going to go ahead and go through the playoff and go after our predictions. But for the first time ever, 12 teams. And for the first time ever, you're going to have home games on campuses, which my hope, if they extend this playoff, which I think they will, that you're going to see more home games on campuses. Can you just imagine, though, like, that's going to be an experience like eventually A&M is going to host a college football playoff game. College Station's going to
That's hilarious. And I appreciate you saying that. It's not April Fool's Day. So the fact that you're using merriment and mirth on December 17th is really appreciated. It helps with the seasonal depression disorder that all A&M fans have right now while they're sadly booking their last minute tickets to Las Vegas or something.
See, I think that would be fun to go to. I'd rather go to the Vegas Bowl than the Peach Bowl as far as attending,
Yeah, but we have such a jackass level of uninventive fans that there are people who are actively ordering Elvis wigs and glasses because that's what they equate with Las Vegas. I go to Vegas a couple of times a year for work or other things.
You count how many Elvis impersonators?
Maybe you see one in 3 days.
Maybe
you have to go seek this crap out. But in their minds, because they're coming from Marlin, Texas, or whatever, in Vegas, I'm gonna get a steak and see Elvis. Well,
they just got a new movie with Nick Cage called Honeymoon in Vegas, and they just saw it.
Yeah, Elvis has been dead since 1977. You're more likely to see Britney Spears drunk on the strip than you are to see an Elvis impersonator at this point.
Now I really want it because she doesn't wear panties when she's drunk,
or at all.
She's from
Louisiana.
It's a Louisiana catcher's mitt
in Louisiana.
That right there is Louisiana catcher's mitt if I've ever seen one.
All right, who else can we offend?
We are off. All right, so yeah, we have our first ever playoff game. I want to go through with you guys round at a time because I think there's some upsets to be had in this. But let's start Texas and Clemson. I don't get overconfident very often. I feel like I'm maybe overconfident in this situation because none of the numbers as far as offensive ability plus what the opposite number in Clemson can do, none of it's in Clemson's favor. The only way Clemson scores is in big plays, and Texas is number one against them, and they have no run defense. Is there a reason why Texas loses this game?
You've got to score more than 20 points. And I say that I think Texas wins. I think they win in a way similar to the way they beat A&M a couple weeks ago. But the reality is that crunching a little bit of numbers, something is wrong with the Texas offense. And maybe it's because they play better defenses, or maybe it's because they're ineffective and they're committing a lot of weird penalties and turning the ball over in the red zone The truth is probably in the middle of those two things. But you look at your non-con schedule, your first 4 games, you average nearly 48 points a game. Sure. Your first 5 SEC games, you averaged 32 points a game. Less, clearly, but, you stepped up in competition a little bit.
And also Quinn came off that injury.
And your last 4, however, have been against Arkansas, A&M, Georgia, and Kentucky. You've averaged 22 points, and you're only at 22 because you got a garbage time touchdown against Kentucky at the very 3 minutes to go in the game.
Yeah.
So something has happened, and I don't think it's necessarily that your talent. I don't think you've been battling a lot of injuries. I know Isaiah Bond has been in and out a little bit. Ewers is walking around on a high ankle sprain that evidently Sark is going to ignore, and maybe he's healed by now and that's going to fix some things. But I think that you should win, but Clemson is a dangerous proposition because Cade Klubnik is the type of quarterback who can get hot and can make you pay for mistakes. So if there are broken plays, if there are short fields, they're going to score points. So if you score 28, I think you win. If you're sitting around 2021, I think it's a tighter game than people are expecting.
It's not going to be unlike A&M in Georgia in that way, where if you're that close because of you being ineffective, like clearly Texas took the air out of the ball in the second half against A&M after Quinn got hurt. But you saw how ineffective they were against Georgia. If you're that ineffective, then it does allow something like a turnover to flip a game in which you might have dominated for 3.5 quarters, but it doesn't matter.
We didn't talk a lot about it, but if A&M catches the 2 interceptions that were thrown directly into their gut, that's a 3-point football game. And they dropped them, and maybe Clemson doesn't drop those. So I think that's the danger, if there's danger. I still think you're going to, on paper, in the recruiting rankings, in every way, Texas is a better team than Clemson. And the only reason Clemson is getting a lot in consideration at all is because of Dabo Sweeney, who, hey, congratulations to him. He signed his first portal player ever this week. So 3 years behind the curve. Good job, Dabo. Everything says Texas wins this game going away. I think Texas has to play better offensively than they have in a month.
Okay, how much of it is –
it's not an issue.
Okay, I will say this, that I have officially flipped my stance of the year, and I believe that Arch Manning should start. In part because now that you have Quinn hobbled, there's just an element to the offense that Quinn doesn't have that Arch does. And we all know – you saw it in the Georgia game. They brought in a quarterback that actually could use his legs, and Texas did not know what to do with it, and that's what gave them the win. So are you there with me yet, or are you still where we were 3 weeks ago by saying Quinn should be your starter?
I don't – there's nothing that Quinn Ewers has shown in the month of November that makes me think he needs to have a December start.
Wow, okay.
I mean, what has he accomplished? I mean, I think if you go back and look at quarterback rating, which, is a nebulous number and all that, he's not performing well. And you're going to get in one of these games, maybe not until the Cotton Bowl at this point, but where it is going to come down to quarterback play. And I just don't know that confidence level, health, whatever factors are going on, I just don't know that he's the guy. And if you have aspirations, which I assume you do, of actually winning a national championship, you're going to have a guy who outperforms in the quarterback position, at least on the 10th of January.
Right, totally. No, I agree. And the fact that Quinn Ewers already can't run and he has a high ankle sprain, and you've got a guy over there on the bench who I don't even know why. Even if you're not going to start him, I don't know why Quinn doesn't take more snaps against Georgia. Even though I do think it worked out better for Texas how that fell through. But the fact of the matter is, you do not believe that Quinn Ewers can beat you with his feet. And I do think that he gets frustrated, particularly when he sees zone coverage. And then if you hit him at least one time, I do believe he is not used to that, and he craters a little bit.
Yeah, and like I said, I don't know if he's in his head. I don't know if how injured he is. I don't know if it's a confidence thing. I don't know if opposing defensive coordinators have seen something in Sark's game plan that allows them to, let Texas mark up and down between the 20s, but then clamp down in the red zone. I just know the results for the last month have not been great for Texas's offense.
And look, you can look at Georgia and you can look at the lack of running game, the lack of offensive line production, and those are all factors. But it still comes back to having a mobile quarterback that can make plays off schedule helps those things as well.
Well, I think that's the other thing. It's not like Georgia played well in the SEC championship. You guys just played worse.
Right. I mean, the halftime, I texted you at halftime. I was like, well, we've outgained them 250 yards to 50, but lead 6-3. We're going to lose. There's no way you're going to win that. And then Quinn gave the game up in the third quarter by not only not scoring, but also turning the ball over.
Yep.
What do you see out of, I think the best game of the opening weekend is going to be Tennessee, Ohio State. I have Ohio State advancing. But I think I can also see Tennessee winning. It's clearly probably part of the problem with the way the bracket lined up. But what are your takes on that game?
I mean, you expect the 8-9 to be the closest matchup in this round. I've got Ohio State too, because I tend to think that Ryan Day coaches well in games that aren't against Michigan. This is kind of similar to these two teams are more closely matched than Clemson, Texas. But if Tennessee gets superior quarterback play, I think they can beat Ohio State. Now, having said that, Ohio State should be angry. They should be really pissed off about that Michigan game. Yeah. Somebody tried to plant a flag on their grass, and that evidently got all kinds of panties twisted to the point that there's actual laws being passed in Ohio making that illegal, because that's the way we answer problems.
Is that true?
Yes, there's a state representative who has made that floated that bill to prevent that from ever happening.
I love hearing that.
Grass. I think Ohio State wins this. I think it's pretty close. I'm interested that this game's on ESPN or ABC, and somehow you guys are on TNT this weekend. But that's the NCAA just not being able to handle their own shit, frankly.
Yeah. I have
to see if whatever streamer I has actually has TNT.
Right. Well, SMU, Penn State. This to me feels like the most lopsided of the first round games. I think Penn State actually might even turn a corner in this whole situation. But I also think you cannot underestimate SMU with a pass-happy offense going into what should be a very inhospitable, weather-wise, Happy Valley.
Yeah, I think that's the deal. Is it's going to be a style of offense that Penn State hasn't seen much of this year, and they're a 11-2 or 10-2 team.
Yeah,
West Virginia kind of runs a higher powered offense normally. Maybe USC does, but the rest of these are very much ground and pound Big Ten offenses. Until you get to Oregon, and then Oregon obviously destroyed them.
And just to give some context right now, for the day of the game, the high in Happy Valley is 27 degrees. The low is 12. There is not supposed to be any precipitation, though.
I will say that,
not the day of.
I will say this, because there's no rain and snow, it's only cold if you're losing. If you're winning, you
put that on a T-shirt, Andy.
But it's true. You only notice the weather if you're losing. If you're winning, you don't, oh, it's so cold out here, I just caught a touchdown. That's not a thing that goes through anybody's head. I sacked the quarterback. It's freezing. I think Penn State set up to win this game pretty easily, but SMU is going to give them things to handle that they haven't had to handle. And SMU really has nothing to lose. This is not like it's not an Ohio State situation where Ryan Day is probably coaching for at least a contract extension at some point.
James Franklin could be coaching for his job too. I mean, frankly.
Yeah. I just think everything kind of falls for the Nittany Lions in that one.
All right. And I think we could probably move pretty quickly past. No, actually, no. I mean, I think this is a compelling game. I think it's Indiana, Notre Dame. I hate the fact that it's Indiana at Notre Dame for some reason. But I do think Notre Dame's defense is going to be able to slap Indiana around. And I think Indiana's been a great story for college football, but I just don't know how good they really are.
Yeah, I think that Indiana's probably at the end of their run, and it's been a great story for college football. Certainly the best season in their history, or at least their recent history, or
Their
modern
coach
history.
paid as a result, 10-year extension.
Yeah, and he's said all the right things, and he's going to be there for a long time in theory, although coaches don't really have – nothing really happens if they leave their jobs. I mean, I signed a 20-year extension. I left after 2. Nothing happened. Somebody else paid my
right
buyout. So these two schools are 2 hours away. I think it's like 105, 106 miles. It's going to be it is a little disappointing that it's at Notre Dame, but I think from a pageantry standpoint, from a college football standpoint, that's certainly you want a playoff game on Notre Dame's campus. And I hate saying that because I hate Notre Dame. I know you and I differ a little bit on that.
But it is like hallowed ground of college football. And
100%. And it's – I just think that Indiana has played as well as they can play, and they're the 10th seed in the playoffs. This is probably the high water mark for Indiana. Could an upset happen? Yeah. I think Notre Dame's defense is way, way, way too strong for Indiana to muster much of an offense. So I kind of expect this to be like
cool. Like, because correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the only Friday game of that weekend, right? It's not the other 3 games are on Saturday, correct?
I think so. Yeah.
So it's sort of neat that the very first home playoff game will be at Notre Dame. Like, you really are bringing that history around.
Yeah, and I kind of expect this to go a little bit like Indiana, Ohio State did. Indiana will play really tough for about a quarter and a half, and then Notre Dame will just overwhelm them. Notre Dame wins going away on this one for me.
All right, I want to go ahead and go through the second round because we're not going to be back here. We should be able to talk about the semifinal, but we don't know really what our schedule will be like. And so that becomes Texas and Arizona in the Peach Bowl. I actually think that's a more favorable matchup for Texas than even Clemson. And what I'm excited about is that apparently some Arizona State defensive lineman has been running his mouth because Sark apparently meanly said – he wouldn't say Sark. He said the coaching staff meanly said, we don't think you're starting here. Your best bet is to transfer. And then he transferred and promptly became a backup on Arizona's team, in which he played in 10 games this past season and got 12 tackles. But he's decided that he's going to make him the story, him and his prematurely bald head. But to me, I feel like it's a better matchup for Texas than even the one against Clemson.
Well, I mean, I read the article when you forwarded it to me yesterday, and what I took from that is, and I don't know this kid. I have no idea what his motivations are other than probably trying to pump himself up a little bit. But the reality is the college football players wanted this to be a business. They wanted to be paid. These are the conversations that you have when you work for somebody.
That's a great point. I never thought of it from that angle. Totally.
And I think realistically
anymore.
But I think realistically, that's what you tell to kids. You tell a kid, hey, you can stay if you want to, but you're not going to play. It's going to be really difficult for you to move on. If you have aspirations to play football and actually participate in games, you may want to look at a different school. If you want to hang around here and take up a scholarship, I mean, I guess you can. I think that
you get a degree from UT, right, versus Arizona State.
And I think that's the conversation. But I think every coach in a college program that's worth anything has those conversations with their kids because you owe it to these kids, to be honest. And frankly, there's so much money involved with college football, and right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't want to have that debate right now, but there is. And these coaches will lose their jobs if they're not winning games. And you win games by having talent that can participate and compete. He was identified as a guy that's probably not going to compete, probably not going to participate. So let's move on and give that roster spot to somebody who can. And he landed on his feet. He's in a Power Four conference. What stands out to me most about this is not even about this. It's that they're going to have to refigure how these buys are. If they don't expand, I don't think you can look at the Big 12 championship, the Big 12 champion, or the whatever league Boise State is in. What is that, Mountain West?
Mountain West, yeah.
I don't think you can look at those two conferences and go, well, these are just as good as the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah, and I think what you're going to see, and a guy I really like watching, Josh Pate, actually painted this out pretty well. Was especially when I think you're going to see expansion, maybe as soon as not next year, but the year after. But I do see, hey, you won those conferences, you're in, but then
Yeah,
you still seed it
great.
one through however you still
Yeah.
seed it based on the ranking, which would give Texas the buy-in and everything else.
Yeah, I
also like his idea too, not to cut you off, but his other big idea for this was removing the championship game and instead having championship weekends being play-in weekend, where maybe if the SEC is guaranteed 4 spots, you have 2 teams playing for that 4th spot.
Yeah.
Because if you think about this the SEC championship game, I really would have preferred to win it, but there's so many people who think Texas might have gotten the advantage by losing that game. They didn't get hurt like Georgia did, and they have a pretty easy path to the national championship relatively.
How does Georgia even end the playoffs? They lost their quarterback. We learned last year when you lose your quarterback, you are eliminated from playoff contention, right? Florida State.
Kirby Smart learned last year, you don't say shit about it until afterward.
There you go. We put him in on the last play so he could hand the ball off with his one arm.
Yeah. Let's look at Ohio State, Oregon. I think actually Ohio State wins the rematch. And I only think that, Andy, because I am such an old school football fan that I still do not believe in the Pac-12. And for a while, they will still be a Pac-12 team to me. Am I right or am I wrong?
I don't know if you're right or wrong. I can't predict the future. If I did, that Powerball ticket or Mega Million ticket in my wallet right now is going to be going a long way. I've got Oregon winning the whole thing at this point, frankly. Okay. I think they are in 2024 enough offensive, or the premier offensive team in college football right now. I think they're going to score a lot of points on anybody they play, and their defense is opportunistic enough. And I think they're proven enough this year. They did beat Ohio State already. They did win the Pac-12. Or what league are they in?
Dude, I did.
Damn you. They won the Big Ten. I think this is by far the best season Oregon has had probably in their history. I'm not going to go back to 19-aught diggity and when they might have won a Rose Bowl or something, but
nothing happened pre-Nike for them anyway, so it's fine.
Hey, sure. Although their mascots used to be much cool. When they used Donald Duck as their mascot, that's when it was cool. And I don't care what they say. They do kind of, but it's like not even a secondary brand. It's a
as a Disney executive, I hope it's big, or Disney rights holder. I hope we sued because they were paying us enough.
Yes, that's how we handle everything. I think Oregon beats whoever comes out of Tennessee, Ohio State. I think it'll be more interesting if Ohio State is there because I think the rematch will be a good game. Frankly, at this point, that's what I'm looking for because if I look at this first round, realistically, Texas Clemson shouldn't be a good game. SMU Penn State shouldn't be a good game. Notre Dame Indiana shouldn't be a good game. What I mean by that is these teams are all heavily favored and should meet those expectations.
I believe the other.
And then you get into the next round.
They're double-digit favorites. Both Texas, Penn State, and Notre Dame, I think, are double-digit favorites in all of their games.
And then you get into the next round. Arizona State's going to lose to whoever they face. Boise State, if it's Penn State, is probably going to lose. If it's SMU, who knows? I don't know what to make of Georgia without a quarterback like we just talked about. So I don't know what that's going to look like. So my hope for good college football and not just rooting for a team is that Ohio State and Oregon meet on January 1st while I'm sitting on my couch at 4:00 in the afternoon after having smoked a pork butt because, New Year's, you need pork, black-eyed peas, substitute green.
Totally.
And it's a good, compelling football game because outside of that, I just don't see where we're going to get one.
Well, let's look at, to me, I do think it's Notre Dame, Georgia, and I think the difference is I think Notre Dame's defense is playing better, and I just don't believe that I think Georgia beats Texas only because that quarterback comes off the bench and Texas had not prepared for him. It's almost what Arch Manning could have provided had he been used. Mm-hmm. But I really think that Georgia's offense has been inconsistent all year. I don't think they get any more consistent by playing a guy who wasn't good enough to start. So I like the idea of Notre Dame's defense shutting them down and moving past Georgia into the Orange Bowl.
Yeah, I think if there's something going on for Georgia, I think Gunnar Stockton, who is going to be starting that playoff game presumably, isn't a bad quarterback. So it's not a giant drop off from Carson Beck, especially the way Carson Beck has played for the bulk of this year, turning the ball over a lot, being relatively inconsistent. And Georgia's offense has been inconsistent when they've had to play what I would consider peer level schools. Notre Dame's defense is too good and has been too good all year, Northern Illinois notwithstanding, that you wouldn't want to see a backup quarterback facing that and hope that you're winning that game. But I think that Gunnar Stockton will turn over the ball less than Carson Beck.
Yeah.
Probably play a little bit more conservative than Georgia would have played with Carson Beck. And that may lead to them having to rely on ETN and a running game if they can generate one. And that's hard to do against Notre Dame. So I think there's a lot of things against Georgia in this game. I think it's going to sound weird. I think the quarterback situation is a little bit better than a 3/4 healthy Carson Beck, who is averaging two turnovers a game.
Yeah, I mean, I do think I do see that part of it, and maybe that's where I keep tricking myself into is I keep going off Carson Beck reputation-wise from August as opposed to what Carson Beck has done, which includes, I think, was it 4 games in a row with 3 picks, right? Like he has played sloppy with the football. His only, I mean, really and truly, the only thing he's benefited from is that Quinn Ewers has played somehow sloppier with the ball. And
well, he didn't have 3 turnovers against Texas in the SEC championship game because he didn't play the whole game.
Right. Exactly. We'll hold off though, because we will have another show to talk about what the semifinals and the national championship looks like. But one of the things that we've been talking about, Andy, is how the game has changed because of NIL and transfer portal. And we started to see a side of that I was a little shocked by, and that is when Marshall has canceled its appointment to play Army in their bowl game because they believe they have lost too many players to the portal to be able to safely field a team. And now there is thought that conferences might begin fining schools for making those decisions. As a result, Marshall is out in 5-7. I think it's Louisiana Monroe, or is it Louisiana Tech?
Louisiana Tech
going to play Army. I believe we're coming to some sense of normalcy when we start getting into revenue sharing. There's going to be some controlling of all this stuff. But do you think conferences should have the ability to fine a school if it doesn't play a bowl game?
Yeah, because the conferences are the ones that suffer from the lack of revenue for that bowl game. So whatever conference Marshall is in, Conference USA, I guess, you can look that. I literally have no idea. I assume I think
it's the American Athletic Conference.
There was a movie with Jack from Lost. That's what I know about Marshall.
Hey, and the Minister of Culture himself, Matthew McConaughey, baby.
Wiped him out of my brain. If I see him this late in the year, that means Texas is having a good season. So I guess congratulations. I now have to see him in Dick's commercials every 30 seconds in this market.
But you have to admit, his Grubhub with Jerry Rice commercial is actually very good. His acting is spot on.
Oh yeah, he's a great actor. That's not my issue with it.
Nice. Yeah.
I something's got to change, but I think what's going to change is these lower tier bowl games are just going to go away. Not this year, not next year, but there is going to be a point in the very near future. I think it's 28 when some of these contracts that ESPN has signed to basically underwrite the bowl games is going to stop. You're going to see more money being concentrated on playoff games, more production. I can't believe that we're going to allow TNT and Max to be a broadcast partner for these games for much longer. And especially if you're going to add a couple more in that first round and get to 16 at some point. But I think I'm a makeup game. I honestly have no idea which bowl games still exist because the sponsors change. But I think the Kinder Spice Bowl game in Texas, in Houston now is maybe not in danger, but the Beef O'Brady Bowl might be. The Las Vegas Bowl might be, because there's just going to be a lack of money. And you're going to see the corporate sponsors starting to realize that if I can't get televised, or I'm now being televised on on the WB or wherever and not on ESPN, I'm going to sell even fewer tickets. I'm going to have even less interest. Fewer teams are going to want to go. I know the argument is there's no such thing as too many bowl games, and I can understand where that comes from.
I'm definitely of that opinion, and I'll give my rebuttal in a second. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but I think the reality is the Cricket Celebration Bowl is probably going to go away. The Scooters Coffee Frisco Bowl is probably going to go away because there's just not going to be enough money for them. And I think that if teams continue to, and I'm saying all this to get to the point of Marshall, if teams back out of games because they're worried about not being competitive, and I understand we can't field a too deep. Well, you had 25, I think their number is right now, of guys in the portal. Maybe it's a little bit more now. I assume it's the same way in every college program, but A&M's got 105 guys plus another group of walk-ons. You could field a team. You need 22 to play. Let's say realistically you need 53 like NFL teams do to play a game. You can manage to play that game and reward those kids who stuck with you for the entire season. I think there's got to be some structural differences, and I don't know if it comes through the profit sharing or revenue sharing or whatever it happens to be, but something's got to change with the timing of the transfer portal. Maybe it's something you only do in the spring to get into the summer. I know college football coaches will hate that because they don't get
transfer
spring.
Portal has to change. And you cannot be dealing with transfers right now. I think it's unfair to. It's
the reality of what everybody's dealing with right now. Somebody on Blue Sky was asking why they can't just move the transfer date to later in January or something. I said, well, you've got classes. You've got 2 dead periods for coaches. You have an actual high school recruiting class that has to get finished up. And then you have most colleges starting back on the 13th of January, the national championship game, because they wanted the transfer portal open after the national championship game. National championship games on January 20th. So you're asking kids to, in the span of probably 3 days, declare for the portal, find their deal, move their lives, get set up with classes, and school has already been going on for 2 or 3 weeks at this point, depending on what school you're talking about. It's just not, and the reality is whether you want to play the student athlete game or not, they do still have to go to classes to be eligible, or at least have somebody check in for attendance. So you have to know the name.
What is that going to do though? Okay. I like I said, I am pro more bowl games, and it's not just because it's super cool at that time of year to just turn on football. And I'm not an NFL guy. I haven't really been for a long time. Nothing to play for, even if you're the world's smallest team. Doesn't that just kill? Does losing every single bowl game end up killing the sport of college football? A big college football fan just walked in. Let me ask this question offline. You think getting rid of every bowl game is good or bad for the sport of college football? Every small one.
I think it's good because right now they don't mean anything. People sit out.
According to you and the guy who just walked in the room, I'm wrong, Andy. So here we go.
What?
I don't
like
the Beef O'Brady Bowl.
Yeah. But, I mean, keep the 12 big ones, but the ones that are like, the Applebee's.com and like.
Is there an Applebee's.com? I hope there is. I get
it.
I
know they have a steak and a steak special.
Big games. They have format. Dollars are going to play, and people aren't going to sit out.
And I definitely 100% understand that and agree with what my colleague just said and what you're saying, Andy. I just worry if you're playing a MAC game, what's the point of even having a season if you have no realistic chance to celebrate your season by playing in the postseason?
Well, I think the answer is what we've talked about is splitting off the top 64 teams, 48 teams, 20, whatever the number is, into their own division and moving the bowl games to that lower level or that second level. There are going to be 47 bowl games.
Okay. That's a lot.
If you're going to move it down to, I'm not saying get rid of all of them, but
30.
if 30 and move it back to the situation where you have to have a winning record and not just 6-6 to get into a bowl game.
Yeah.
I heard that Florida State volunteered to take Louisiana Tech's spot in that game against Army, and the Independence Bowl said, no.
Right.
We're desperate. We're not taking a 2-win Florida State team.
They can't get in for winning. They can't get in for losing.
But no, some of it's gotten silly. I think there are some that if you are financially viable without ESPN propping you up, I think you can have a bowl game. If you are only in existence to provide something for ESPN to air and you're selling less than 10,000 tickets, nobody's interested in that game anyway.
I guess that's true. No one does attend, right? The only ones that are I feel like no matter where Texas or A&M plays, there's always a percentage of people, but we also don't play in some of the dumbest games. Some of the dumbest games, you're right, no one's there. No one cares.
Now, having said all that, if we were being invited to the Pop-Tart Bowl, I would be there in a damn minute because I want to touch that trophy. I want to
Pop-Tart. I want Jim Crane to somehow get either A&M or Texas to play in the Pop-Tart Bowl, and then I want to give a replica of that trophy away every Monday in Astros season because I would take all of it.
I mean, it's a working toaster. It's fantastic. And if you're going to do that, I don't remember which one it was, but there was a bowl game a couple of years ago where guys had the Duke's Mayo Bowl. They have to jump in a vat of mayo or get mayo dumped over their head or something. Make it fun because frankly, the football on the field is not always fun. Give me a show. Get back to that, and then I'm interested in watching your bowl game.
All right. Well, let's get back to the one thing that's not a show right now. Okay, talk a little Astros baseball. Still not a sign from Alex Bregman on where he's signing. And I think the silence is starting to make people from our fan base feel like it's a done deal, it's over, and also making some other fan bases feel super confident that it's going to happen. I'm of the opinion that we are still nowhere closer. We're nowhere further removed or closer to signing Alex Bregman than we were a week ago.
And that's what Dana Brown has said. And I if you're Brian McTaggart, if you're Chandler Rome, if you're a beat writer for wherever, you're operating on a lack of information, but you still have to write an article every day, or every week, depending on who you're writing for. So you got to come up with something. And if you've got no news, I guess that's what it is. I think there was also a lot of national snap judgment made that you signed Isaac Paredes, who has historically been a third baseman at the major league level, and what is now being called the centerpiece of the deal, Cam Smith, is a third baseman in the minor leagues and was at Florida State. So it looks like you just got 2 third basemen, and there's also talks that you're in the deal for Nolan Arenado, who's another third baseman. The idea that they're talking to St. Louis at all about a third baseman means to me that Isaac Paredes was never intended to play third base in Houston. He is your replacement first baseman, and I don't know why that is such a foreign concept to the national beat writers who immediately said, "Oh, well, that's Bregman's replacement. They're out of it." Having said that, I have no idea what Alex Bregman is going to do. I still think there's negotiation. I think the fact that it's not done means that whatever number he and Scott Boras have arrived at isn't being offered by anybody. Because I think if it was being offered, he'd take it. I don't think he's sitting at home with an offer sheet for $200 million.
To be fair, he's sitting in the Bahamas watching Garrett Stubbs get married because I follow his wife on Instagram. But yes, gotcha.
All right, so I don't think he's sitting in the Bahamas with an offer sheet from the Yankees for $200 million and an offer sheet from the Astros for $156 million and not knowing what to do about that. I think if there was anything close to that 200 number he reportedly is seeking, he would have signed by now. I don't think the Tigers are signing him for 216 because I saw that rumored. I don't think the Yankees are signing him for 200. I don't think anybody's going to get over like 175, 180 for him. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're just all waiting. I was really irritated yesterday that it seemed like all of Major League Baseball seemed to take the day off. I guess the Orioles signed a 35-year-old Japanese pitcher for a year, and the Astros did sign a minor league catcher who I guess our fan base is going to freak out about when he hits 300 in Sugarland. Joe Hudson, welcome to the Astros organization. But yeah, I don't think anybody has any idea what Alex Bregman is going to do outside of Alex Bregman and Scott Boras. And until they make that decision, there's not a lot to report. I will say, as I have said, as happened last week, as soon as we are done recording, there'll be news. So you're welcome.
Yeah. Well, we'll at least be back Thursday. We're actually going to talk to Jeff Rakowskis from Bricks Behind the Ivy. I did his show talking a little bit about Kyle Tucker, and he's going to come in and fill us in on Paredes and the Polish guy from Houston. That's right, baby. One of our people is back. Wisniewski, right? Is that who he is?
Wisniewski, yeah.
Yeah. And then so we're gonna get his perspective, because the thing I took away from being on his show is neither fan base is super happy about the deal, which tells me the deal was probably fair.
Yeah. I think there's some interesting things we'll be able to talk about next week. Wisniewski's been told by Dana Brown that he's in their plans as a starter. So that's interesting, which means we have 32 starters in our 40-man roster. Can't field an outfield. I think the big issue is that more deals are coming, and we don't know what those are. And I don't think our fan base deals well with the unknown.
Yeah, let's let Dana Brown cook, and let's start criticizing him midway through spring training.
Yeah, worry about this. I worry about the roster on February 16th or whenever catchers and pitchers report, because that's when the rubber meets the road for that. But I think there's still a lot of pieces in play for the Astros and for Dana Brown in the front office. And I don't think the roster as it looks now is what we're going to be opening the season with.
Well, I do want to close on one thing, because last time we had a big announcement about, the show you produce, the show I created. And it's kind of neat, Andy, that Ballpark Nation has now been licensed by Amazon Prime. Still much to know as far as when and where, but it does look like by the time opening day hits, all 10 episodes of Ballpark Nation will be on Amazon Prime. So thanks for everything you've done for that. Congrats. I think it's very much a team effort, and very excited to see this thing happen.
I mean, I don't know what I'm getting paid. I do know I'm cheaper than therapy. So congratulations on that.
You're also cheaper than Alex Bregman, so maybe you can play third. All right. For Andy Tom Chesson, I'm Jim Christopher. Like you said, we're actually be back on Thursday with a special guest, and we're going to focus a lot more on Alex Bregman and the Astros and baseball as we stand. But until then, Andy, enjoy some Christmas movies. I'm glad you recommended Red One. It was a delight. And you guys, Andy shared with me the best thing I've seen this Christmas, and that is two of our favorite fake doctors and real friends doing Baby It's Cold Outside. We'll put the link in the description of this episode, because, Andy, it was a delight.
As always with you, sir.
I don't care what the newsman says. Christmas is full of cheer. I don't care if you think it's a lie. Christmas will soon be here. I don't care about anything except hearing them sleigh bells ring a ding ding. I wish it was Christmas today. I wish it was Christmas today.